baby, the one who...
Fallout is a new show on Prime Video, and as you can probably guess, is an adaptation of the video game franchise. And before we go any further, I am going to be going into spoilers in this video. You have been warned. There's a lot to talk about, and I don't feel like I can do this video without going into spoilers. And so without further ado, let's get into it. About 200 years ago, nukes fell on the earth. It completely destroyed everything, and so America, a lot of people were forced to go and live in vaults. A lot of stuff that's happening outside with the survivors is forming factions and trying to just make it through the day. In the middle of all this, one of the Vault 33 survivors, Lucy McLean, played by Ella Purnell, is forced to go outside and face the world when her father, Hank McLean, played by Kyle MacLachlan, is kidnapped by a bunch of raiders, led by a woman named Moldaver, played by Sarita Chaudhary, and she has to find out why he's been kidnapped and find him using any means necessary. Now, going into this, I played some Fallout games. I played Fallout 4, played New Vegas, I played some of 76. I haven't played the first 3 games, but I do have them. And going into this show, I was expecting there to be adaptations of those first few games. They're in here. You can get hints of Fallout 1, 2, 3, even 4. There are some things sprinkled in there throughout. In fact, there's a lot of 2 and 3 in here, especially with the new California Republic, as the show eventually does reveal more of later on. And those things lead to a lot of really interesting Easter eggs. There are times where you're going to see a few visuals and immediately go, oh, I remember that from this game. I remember that from that game. Even if you haven't played them, like I hadn't played all the Fallout games, there were things in it which I knew from Fallout 4, for instance, and I was like, oh, it's that, or this musical cue is from Fallout 4. In fact, there was a moment in episode 6, I believe, where Lucy sees a flag of the NCR and the theme kicks in. And there are Easter eggs like that sprinkled in throughout the season. And in that way, if you're somebody who is a fan of the Fallout games, you're going to have a great time with this show, because it does seem like the people who are behind it, Lisa Joy, Jonathan Nolan, all the other creatives involved, they have a reverence for the games that is very apparent. And that leads to one of the best parts of this show, which is just how much they honor that material. You're not gonna see everything from every game in here. There are certain things which are omitted for now. Like if you are somebody who is a big fan of Fallout New Vegas, then you're not gonna get much New Vegas in here. But I'll talk more about that later. But there is other stuff in here which you definitely get to see a lot of, and I was super impressed with that. A lot of it's surprisingly practical. There's a lot of CGI, of course, but there are some real sets and costumes and things going on over here that are genuinely amazing. They even apparently made working Pip-Boys for this, because whenever Lucy's using hers, I'm like, wait, that's real. That's very real. And I'm not surprised about that, but it was just pretty cool to see a working one with the interface just like the game. It was just really, really awesome and a really cool thing to see. There's even dog meat in this show, which was awesome. I mean, I know dog meat mostly from like Fallout 4, this version of him on that. I thought, hey, that's cool. I'm glad that, you know, he's there. And in fact, there's a moment which references directly where you find dog meat in Fallout 4. I keep going to 4 because that's the one I was first familiar with, so you'll have to excuse me on that one. But certain things like that really did get me super happy when I was watching the show. But coupled with the effects is also just the fact that the show is beautifully shot. There's some gorgeous cinematography over here. Certain shots that definitely, you know, you'll have your jaw dropped in them as to how they recreated those. And almost completely flawlessly. And what also works so great about this adaptation is that it understands the tonal differences that go on with Fallout. It is at once incredibly dark and serious and manages to capture the disturbing effects of the end of the world pretty incredibly, but at the same time it can also be extremely funny, and there are moments where you will genuinely laugh at certain moments. Like there's a few things, even very simply comedically, that are timed just right. And those moments were genuinely pretty good. I like the way that they were able to play around with that without necessarily messing up that scene. Like there's even action sequences where something really crazy is happening, someone will make a joke, or there's a comedic thing that happens physically, but you don't necessarily feel like it messes up the scene. It just works in that moment. It's like, yeah, sure, why not, And I did appreciate that because that's even in the games. And on top of that is the cherry, which is the three main characters who are really, really good over here. Lucy, played by Ella Purnell, is fantastic. This is the second game adaptation with Ella Purnell, the first one being Arcane, where she played Jinx. And I think that this is the silver bullet when you need to do a really good video game adaptation. Because both performances, one animated, one live action, there is something that she brings to these characters which is genuinely amazing. And once again, with Fallout, her character over here is wonderfully realized. She has to sell, again, a very difficult and challenging character arc because as someone who has grown up in a vault her entire life, going out there onto the surface and seeing what all is happening and dealing with all new kinds of threats and situations, these are things that she's not super familiar with. And so when you're watching the first few episodes specifically, you're gonna see her make decisions and go, why are you doing that? That's really stupid. But she doesn't genuinely know any better. Like in the middle of the night, she starts a fire and she's found almost instantly by a couple of parties. And immediately when that party says like, hey, how are you setting up a fire? Are you shouldn't be doing this right now. They'll find you really quickly. And it's like, yeah, I mean, again, you don't expect her to know that there are going to be that many, traps easily, set up like, hey, we got another one. And as the episodes progress, I think it's around the halfway point where she is meeting Codsworth, who is, trying to get her organs for a second. And that's when she really has her flight response kick in. And, she's able to really come into her own a little bit as someone who has to do anything to survive. And right then, that's when it sort of sheds that entire coil of like, okay, I've been trying to play it nice so far and, be really, forthcoming, but I realize you can't just trust anybody out here. Things are going to have to be a little more militant. And this is something that's also represented with Cooper Howard's character, played brilliantly by Walton Goggins. What he's doing with Cooper is both terrifying and heartbreaking at the same time. Terrifying in the sense that he has lived for about 200 years and become a ghoul, and basically is kind of unstoppable when it comes to just killing a bunch of people. There's a big scene with him where he just wipes out like 20 people without flinching, and it's pretty amazing what he's able to accomplish. But there is also a backstory to him involving him and his family, which has led to a lot of what's happened in the world since, and being very much at the center of those developments, in particular stuff that's happened with Vault Tech, which has eventually now canonized into the fact that they're the one who dropped the nukes. And the decision to do that came through his wife. So that's something that obviously incredibly impacts his decision making when it comes to certain things. And I love the way the show captured that too. That's something that you find out as things progress. But I did love that. I think that way you're able to get a very complex character, not just someone who's trigger happy for the sake of it. And then there's the third performance, that being Maximus, played by Aaron Moten, who is someone who is a squire at first for the Brotherhood, and he is with a knight at first. And at that point of time, he is just trying to get his shot at doing something more than just being a pushover. When he does get that opportunity and he heads out with Knight Titus, and Knight Titus eventually dies after getting mauled by a bear pretty much, he takes on the armor, but it comes with its shortcomings because you have to earn your way into being a knight. And that involves doing stuff that is genuinely heroic. You can't sort of cheat your way into it. But when that stuff does happen, and when he is eventually in a bit of a crisis meeting Lucy at this point of time, the two of them do form a bond that eventually helps him go on a journey that makes him realize what it takes and sort of earn his way up to the top. But also find out there are people out there that are worth fighting for because of that connection that he forms with Lucy. It is eventually a romantic one, which is really, really well realized. But it's also a journey that comes with the fact that you have to sort of deal with certain things that you've done. For his case in particular, there are certain things that happen, like just letting Titus die, which is like, okay, now that's going to get you into trouble. It's like, yeah, but he was also in a situation where he was being threatened. So it's a very, double-edged sword. It's like, you did just let this guy die. It's like, yeah, but also he was threatening me. So, and I know it's not going to work over with other people, but what the hell. But also one thing which I really liked was the plot line with Norm, Lucy's brother. I thought he was super interesting. He eventually discovering the conspiracies around the vaults and what all has happened. He is eventually leading forward the plot in terms of reaching that conclusion within that space as to what has been going on and what exactly has led to the vaults being as they are and what caused the end of the world. And as all of the characters that are involved in the story are getting the answers as to how all of this has gone down, I think the show did a very good job structuring it. There's a couple of things that I think could have been explored a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if they save some of that for a future season 2, which I believe they seem to already want to be doing. I think I read somewhere that they're pretty confident about that. But in that case, I don't know if that's something that's going to be an issue for me eventually. But as of right now, I was watching the show going, there's a few things which I did not get answers to. There are some things that I did get answers to. Like I was wondering what's going to be the, eventual culmination with what happened to Lucy's mom, and then you get that conclusion, the fact that she was someone who made it to the surface after finding out about what Waltech was doing. And then eventually, in a move to wipe out the competition, there was a wipeout of Shady Sands, which is the area that she was in along with Lucy. But also that's the area where Maximus was. So it becomes a very interconnected story. And then, of course, the big story leading around Hank being the one who pulled the trigger on that. And there's a heartbreak involved in there as well. Again, there's so much that has hit Lucy in these 2 weeks the show spans that you can't help but look at the character at the end of it and go, yeah, I completely understand why you're about to make certain decisions that you are and how things are eventually about to play out. But barring a few minor gripes here and there, I really did love the show. Like I said, I did want to lead this more like a spoiler discussion, but I am very pleased with what this was able to pull off. I loved the final bit where you see Hank making his way to Las Vegas, setting up a new Vegas storyline. I thought that was really cool. So we're finally going to get to see that stuff as well. Eventually we do get there. And I would honestly say this is one of the best video game adaptations that I have seen. I think it's a really, really great show and definitely worth your time. If you've played the games, any of them, then it's cool. If you've never played a Fallout game, it's also pretty cool. I mean, that is one of the best things about a video game adaptation for me is anyone can watch it. It's not with any specific audiences in mind. It works for everybody. And I think in that sense, it is a very successful adaptation. Barring a couple of issues here and there, I was very happy with it. I'm going to give Fallout Season 1 an A. Good stuff. Really, really good stuff. I am very satisfied with it, and I really cannot wait for that Season 2. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. And, war never changes, am I right?